language.
Hello and welcome back to the Way to Native Chronicles. I have an interesting video for you today. It's to do with the good old Ruger number 1. I have chambered for 45-120, and I think those of you who've followed my channel for a while know that I really love this gun and get a lot of use out of it. This rifle is primarily a hunting rifle. Unlike a lot of the Sharps rifles and stuff that are chambered for these old style Buffalo hunting era cartridges, this rifle of mine really is aimed at hunting for moose in particular. And what I like to do is I like to hunt using cast bullets. But the problem with the cast bullet, it doesn't expand a whole lot, so you want to just punch a big hole with the bullet already being large, and you want to be able to push it pretty fast. Now with the 45-120, it's designed for black powder, but you can actually use smokeless. So what is the purpose of this video? Well, one of the problems with taking an old black powder designed case and cartridge and using it with smokeless powder is you've got a very long case. You can see that here. I've got 50 of them here ready to go, and you've got a lot of capacity because the idea was to fill this whole case right up to the very brim pretty well with black powder. Black powder is not very energetic, so you need a lot of it. And even with this case filled all the way up, I still don't get really sufficient velocity on my 535 grain cast bullets. So I want them to go a little faster. I want the bullet to shoot flat, actually, is one of the main criteria. So what I'm able to do with the loads I've developed is I take this cartridge and I use smokeless powder in it. And the powder that I'm using, that I found what works the best, is the accurate 5744 that I have here. And I use large Magnum rifle primers. The bullets that we're using are cast from the Lyman mold. I think it's the 457132 mold. It's I'm using wheel weights with a bit of tin added. So, well, and lest I forget, I also put some gas checks on these bullets that I make myself from beer cans, because now that plain-based bullet is going to be moving at about 1600 feet per second, which is just a little too fast for a plain-based bullet with that type of alloy and fit. So to keep it from letting the barrel, I put a gas check on it and everything works hunky-dory. So getting back to what I was going to deal with, the case being so large doesn't need to be filled all the way with smokeless powder. Now, quite frankly, this Ruger number 1 action is so strong. They are just incredible. I could probably fill it right up to the top, and I could easily replicate a 458 Winchester Magnum with this load and that bullet as far as energy delivered goes. But I'm not going to, because number 1, I like my shoulder, and number 2, it's just not necessary. I can hit the moose with the power of a 7mm Magnum with the load that I have. So, and that's perfectly good enough. So I'm trying to get that big, heavy cast bullet moving at a sufficient velocity so that when I'm taking shots out to, 150, even 200 yards, I can aim dead on the animal and hit him. I sight this rifle to hit dead on at 150 yards. Anything closer, it's still going to be in the kill zone. So you need a flat shooting bullet to do that. That was one of the criteria I used. So I'm only filling this case up about half. Now there is a little bit of a problem when you fill a case up only halfway, and that is that the powder will sit in the case in different positions depending on where it's being, you know, as you put it in the gun. It's not quite as uniform as if you have the powder filling the whole case, but there is a way of getting around that. What some people do is they'll take a bit of filler, and you can see here I've got some cotton batting, which is not the ideal, but it's what I've been using. I use 2 grains, which is I think about half of this little piece. I weigh them each out on a weigh scale when doing this, and I stuff that cotton batting into the mouth of the case to take up the remainder of the space in the case, so that the charge of powder stays in one position for more uniformity between firings. So, you know, that is a long used method with reduced load cartridges. In this case, it's not a really, well, it's a reduced load in a sense, but it's sort of a little twist on that theme, because I'm just going with an oversized case, and I'm getting actually not a reduced load. This is a full house load as far as moose hunting goes, but because of the size of that case, you know, I'm basically stuck with the same kind of challenge. So, when you have filler in a case, is that a good thing to do or not? It's a very difficult question to answer with absolute certainty, to be quite frank. I have read a lot of stuff on this, everything I can on it, and frankly, there's just contradictory evidence out there. I would say that the most of it, and the most reliable, indicates that it's not a real danger to your gun in terms of creating overpressure conditions, and especially when we're talking about a straight-walled case. With a bottleneck case, maybe a little bit more so of a danger. And when I say a danger, there are people that claim that using the filler in a case can result in a bulged barrel, where you get an overpressure condition, that the filler just wads up tight like a plug, and it won't let the escaping gases get out of the case, which would really spike your pressures a lot. That makes me especially worried because this gun is a custom rifle, and I mean, even the barrel is engraved. Everything is just—it's a beautiful gun. It's the stock is custom. Everything is. I mean, this gun is, you know, maybe a $10,000 gun. So you really don't want to bulge this beautiful barrel. I mean, I've got gold engraved inlays on it, even on the muzzle end and stuff, and I would just hate to take any kind of chances with it. But I have actually taken this load and tested it with filler and without filler in the past, about 3 years ago. This was while I was still trying to settle on different bullets and charges and different powders. So I was doing a lot of different testing at the time, but at one point I did say, okay, let's run a little test or two with filler and without filler. And I did find that the cartridges that have filler in them, they, as far as standard deviation goes, when measuring the velocity through a chronograph, they were substantially tighter in that respect. So, yeah, more uniform load when you do use a filler. So I'm just taking you through my thought process here on this, okay? I know it's a little long-winded, but I just want you to kind of get an idea of all the variables and considerations that are involved when trying to make decisions like this. And really, a decision like this is something that comes down to your particular situation. Like, one of the important considerations in my case is that this rifle is very valuable. That's a very important consideration. So even though I'm not super scared of overpressure, even a small risk of it is maybe a bit too much. And I put, you know, probably 1,500 rounds through this gun, so, you know, it's not like I haven't tried it out with the filler. It's been working. but still, maybe it's kind of a foolish thing to do. And the reason I'm going to say that it's perhaps foolish is because of something that I tell people quite often. You have to differentiate between hunting and target shooting. They're very different things. A moose is a pretty big animal, and actually you hunt deer and bear with this as well. But I mean, even deer, your shots on animals, this is not a super long range rifle, so we're talking, 150 yards is pushing it with open sights, especially at my age of 65, although my eyes are still pretty good. To get that kind of accuracy like this rifle is bloody accurate. I've got some other videos where I demonstrate that, just putting 3 shots just right next to each other at 150 yards. It just, the rifle is unbelievable with just these peep sights on it. High quality rifle, and so the ammunition is giving me such accuracy that that's not really a concern of mine. So if it's not a huge concern of mine, and I spread my groups out just 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, at 100 yards, is that really a problem? Is that worth all the hassle of filling the cartridges with fillers, and perhaps taking a chance on damaging this basically irreplaceable rifle, one of a kind? I'm starting to think maybe not. So I have accumulated quite a few cases here. I have another 100 rounds of these, so I'm doing good with these rare cases. You can actually buy them still, by the way. These are Norma. This is Norma brass. I've got quite a few empty cases now, and I've been thinking about this for quite a while. And what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to switch over to using no filler in my cartridges, because I've almost shot away all the ones I have that have filler in them by now anyways. And but before I do commit myself to that full changeover, I want to see 2 things. I want to see how much is the standard deviation difference between the 2 methods, using filler and not using filler in the case. I have run some tests. I'll show you that in a little bit here on the computer. Some of the old data that I have, this is going back 3 years, and we'll take a quick look. It's not very exhaustive data, so I would like to do a real good solid run using the exact same parameters, varying nothing except for the filler. And from that I'm going to be able to tell just how much of a difference we get in velocity variations. And number 2, I want to also see what kind of difference in velocities, average velocities I get, because if it's not much, it's not going to require a whole lot of sighting in and difference in my technique. Based on what I see from my old data, having filler and not having filler will result in it's probably going to be about 20 feet per second difference in velocity. But so we'll see how that goes. So thanks for putting up with this part of the opening on this video. I wanted to give you an overview of what's going on here. These are the components we're using, gas checks. I've got quite a few of these big bullets, cases, primers, accurate 5744 powder. I've got my reloading, my old reloading data here, and I've got a sheet already prepared for doing my testing that I'm going to fill out. So let's take a quick look on the computer at the data that I currently have, and I'll kind of show you what kind of differences I've detected so far when it comes to filler versus non-filler. Okay, let's take a quick look here at some of the older chronograph testing I have here, some of the data I've stored over the years. You can see it's a good idea to keep your records in a way that you can refer to them again in the future. Some of this stuff was recorded when I was developing the initial loads for the 45-120, and you can see that I began using 41-98 powder quite a bit, and finally settled on what I felt was an optimal muzzle velocity, and
continued to work on that load, and finally arrived at using the plain base cast bullet with a gas check on it, so I could have the velocities I wanted and the accuracy and so on. So here's where I wound up near the end. I had my different types of heat treated bullets. I was trying that for quite a while, but what's of interest is I was using filler in some cases here, and in some cases I was using no filler. I think I have some other cases where I was using no filler as well. That was probably 2 grains filler, no filler here. So by looking back at these old results, I could get an idea of what kind of standard deviation variations I was getting in the past when I was trying it out with filler versus no filler. So I know already that to expect that I'm going to get a little bit of difference. But as I was saying earlier in the video, I'm not so sure that the difference is so stark that I really need to continue using filler. So this is what we're going to move on to today. I've got my past data condensed a little bit in this area here. That's my old data. You'll notice that in the case of this no filler test here, was only 3 shots made with this 5744. So that's another reason for doing this test, as I really didn't test the 5744 very well using the filler versus the no filler, and that's what I'm going to do this time, because I have settled on 5744 as the powder that's best to use. It's actually a powder that's made for cases like the 45-120 when you have a lot of extra case capacity. So that's why I've left this area down here blank, ready for me to fill in the test results. Having done that, I printed out this sheet. I'm all ready to go. So let's go and let's quickly make up some test rounds. I'm going to go with 12 rounds with the 2 grains of filler in it, and I'm going to have 12 rounds without any filler in the cases. Then we're going to go out to the range, do a little bit of shooting through the chronograph and see what kind of results we get. So let's make up those rounds now. Just for fun, this is the whole process here. I'm not doing this all in one day, of course, but you know, to make up these cartridges, when you're casting bullets and starting with the wheel weights, it's quite a process. So here we go, giving you a quick overview of what's all involved. Getting bullets made, making the gas checks for them, making the bullet lubricant that you use for the bullets, and sizing the bullets, injecting lubricant into them, resizing the cases, taking out the old primers, flaring the case mouths, cleaning out the primer pockets, putting in new primers. Then of course we got to put some new gunpowder in there. And when it comes to the cotton batten, for the 12 that I'm going to use cotton batten, I'll put that in there and then seat the bullets, and we're all done here, ready to go out and do some testing. Well, we're here at the range now, and I have my test ammunition down here with 12 rounds of this 45-120 with filler in it, and I have 12 rounds without filler in it. Exactly the same cartridges in every other respect except for the filler. So I have my chronograph set up over there at about 15 feet. Looks good, and so we'll just have to give this a shot then, I guess. So let's try one here. It's better to shoot this gun from a standing position because it has a bit of recoil. And I'm going to check. I have it connected by Bluetooth to my phone, so after each shot I'll make sure I got something recorded here. Yeah, what do we get? The phone say anything? Let's see here. I'm gonna leave these sunglasses down. Actually, I'll put this phone right down here. Maybe I'll work a little better.
try that. So 1628. Nice thing about recording on the phone is you get your standard deviations at least. 1648. 1648 on the phone too, so that's good. I'm going to have a sore shoulder by the end of this. That says 1629. Take my sunglasses off so I can read these displays a little better. $16.34 looks like. Maybe I have to learn how to shoot this thing left-handed so I can even out the pounding on my shoulders. Oh, was that an error? No, 1639. Now, in order to really test something like this, I've heard the best advice is do about 12 rounds. So it's going to be punishing with this gun. Let's see how we do here. I'm going to have a sore shoulder after this. You can, once in a while you can see the filler flying out the end of the barrel when I shoot. That last shot was 1636. Pretty tight velocity variation there so far. My wife's standing right behind the camera, so maybe I should let her shoot the last few shots. 1638. Man, that's pretty tight as far as velocity goes. It's not much variation. I might have to stick with this filler if it's that good. Let's try another one. 1634. Pulled out some hair on that one. That's 1617. That was a little bit off. Normally when I'm hunting, I'll tie my hair back. 1644. And you know, since I had that one shot not record, I'm going to grab, I got an extra round just like this, fill around in the truck. I'm going to grab that. 1629. That barrel is getting hot. Here, I'm going to grab one more round from the truck. Take this from that hunting pouch that I've made. Let's give her another one here, because I think Yeah, I got 11 shots recorded. I'd like to have 12 so it evens out with the other one. And after these 12, I'm going to let the barrel cool down on this gun a bit too, because it's getting mighty hot. It's a heavy barrel rifle, which helps. That is 1632 for the final one with filler. And if I look at this output here, it's telling me I have a standard deviation of 8.1, velocity spread of 31 feet per second, minimum was 1617 feet per second, maximum was 1648. Average velocity was 1635.42. So standard deviation of 8.10. That's actually pretty good. So I'm going to get set up here next with the next round, shooting cartridges without the filler. Okay, we've given the barrel a few minutes to cool down, and we'll try it now with the shots with no filler. And hopefully I don't get any missteps recording the on the chrono. This is one of these Caldwell chronographs, by the way. So I have it connected by Bluetooth to my smartphone. Much easier that way than pulling a bunch of wires. So let's give her a shot here, see what happens. Got a new group save there. $16.14. That's quite low compared to the previous set. So that's, boy, I normally wear a hair tie, but I forgot it at home. So I got to keep my hair off my shoulder, else it pulls out. That was surprisingly low velocity. 1622. But besides the velocity, what's really interesting to see what the standard deviation will be. $16.18. So yeah, we're talking quite a bit less velocity. But seems to be pretty tight so far on the velocity. It's let's see here. Oh, that one was 1646, so that jumped up quite a bit. And actually I could feel that a little bit. The gun kind of torqued towards my cheek. I gotta be careful I don't start to develop a flinch, because I'm taking a real beating here on my shoulder. Just gotta concentrate on squeeze. 1623. $16.13. That barrel's getting good and hot. Okay. $16.27. Five more to go. Hopefully my shoulder holds out. This thing I calculated the recoil, if I got the weight of the gun right, at 11 pounds, it's probably about 33, 34 foot-pounds of recoil. more or less like shooting a 7mm mag, I think, actually. 1657. Okay, that kind of blows it right out of the water there. I'm starting to think if I get that much velocity variation, I think my lowest one was 1617. I'm up to 1657. Shoot, that's a lot. And now I'm sitting at 1645. Again, quite high. So I get some real up and down in velocities without the filler. So, yeah, I think I'm going to have to stick with this filler. This one's 1638. Two more left. 1629. Last one. 1618. So yeah, you can see way down there to 1618. Oh man, that barrel's so hot. Okay, so my standard deviation is a whopping 14.2. If you recall from the last batch, it was 8.1. So just huge improvement by putting filler in there. My average velocity was 1629.17. The minimum velocity was 1613, and maximum was right up to 1657. So yeah, that's a spread of 44 feet per second among these 12 shots, which is not good. I'm really glad actually that I ran this test, because with this gun I have tested it with filler and not filler, but with using different powders, and actually using the accurate 5744. I've been told that that's a better powder for large capacity cases that aren't filled right up, but obviously it's not magic. This is at least it's proof that answers my questions whether I should maybe go back to using no filler. And after seeing this, we'll take a look at this back at the house there. Maybe bring up the computer screen. I can show up some graphs. We'll see what we can do on this just to wrap this thing up. But so far it's been quite interesting. Catch you in a bit. Welcome back. Back at the home base here, and I've had a chance to take a closer look at the chronograph results that we got out in the field. And I'd like to just quickly go over this with you, because there is something to be learned from this. There is a video on the channel here called Statistical Analysis, how to analyze your results. I'll put a link to that video up in the corner here, and give the name of it down the bottom of the scene here, just so you can find that if you like, because there is quite a bit involved in taking your data. You put in a lot of work into obtaining it and designing the test that you want to run. So with that amount of data you have, you want to make the very best use of it that you can, and this is going to be a little example of that. So what you can see here, first of all, I have my basic summary sheet, and I'll show that over here. It's a close-up. When you look at that, it's the lower portion that's titled Accurate 5744 Powder that's of interest. The stuff on the top of the sheet is historical data
that was not really pertaining to the 5744 powder very much, except for that one instance where I had 3 shots with no filler using 5744. But now we've gone ahead and made a real full test, 12 shots with the 5744 having filler in the case, and 12 shots without it. So this is now a fair test. And you can see my reaction out in the field as I was shooting it. My initial reaction to the variation in velocities was pretty negative towards the charges without filler, but let's hang on and not jump to conclusions too quick, because you do have to take into account the number of samples and whether or not the variation can be expected as a normal chance event with that given number of samples. So first of all, we're going to take a look here at this summary sheet at the bottom, and you can see that the difference is quite stark. The standard deviation was 8.1 when I used 2 grains of filler in that case. I also use a figure of percent standard deviation. I like that better for comparing various loads with each other among different cartridges. What I do is I take the standard deviation divided by the velocity of the bullet, and then multiply that fraction by 100 to get a percent. So it's a percentage of the velocity. It stays proportional to the velocity, which I think is a little fairer comparison. So I have a 0.5 standard deviation on that, which compares quite well with the results that I've had in the past. This is not an anomaly by any means. It's a good standard deviation in my opinion. But when we get to the no filler samples, where I also had 12 shots, there we jump up to a standard deviation of 14.21 and an extreme spread in velocity of 44 instead of 31 feet per second was the filler. And the percent standard deviation is 0.87. So it's not quite double the standard deviation of the previous set, but it's quite a big jump. And tell you the truth, that when I look at that, I just kind of think, well, that 2 grain filler is definitely by far and away the best. And I'm also basing that on results from the past where I've used different powders with filler as well. So the evidence is beginning to accumulate stronger and stronger in favor of using filler with a large capacity case that isn't filled right up, whether you're using 4198 or 5744. My hope was that 5744 would be better in terms of a large capacity case, but in truth it is no better at all. So let's just move on quickly and just take one final look at this. You can see here is the charted variation of velocities, which I'm showing up here as well, so you can see it a little better. This is with filler, and then when I have the chart using the same scale of X and Y axis, you can see that's quite a difference. Without filler at the bottom there, it spikes way up, spikes way down, whereas the one with filler, it's a much smoother, less jumpy graph. So that I would encourage you to take a look at that video that I mentioned earlier about analyzing your results statistically. I think you'll find that very helpful. It'll show you how to use the tools like Excel and other software tools and some formulas to analyze your results. So to wrap up, speaking of formulas, I want to also run this by you. And this is where it becomes a little bit surprising. If you look at, I have a formula here. I've been told there are other methods of doing the statistical analysis. I am not a field expert in this, but this is a simple method that gets to the point that's within the capability of people. I'd encourage you to take a look at this method. There's a formula here. You have your standard deviations and your average velocities,
So you can go ahead and plug that into this formula and you have this graph. Depending on the number of samples that you're using in your analysis, you can take two populations, two sets of data, and see whether the difference between those two is statistically significant or not. And to be quite honest, I got a t-value, that's the t-critical value of 0.382, and for a value of 12 samples, which is what I have here, it would have to be over 0.599 in order to be statistically significant. So really this formula is telling me that this variation could be totally explained just by chance variability, given the size, the sample size that's involved. If the differences in average velocity was greater, then it would stand out as a statistically significant difference between the two populations. But since they are very close, that's what this is telling me. But you know, you got to use your own judgment too. When I look at these graphs especially, and I've seen this over and over again with the filler versus non-filler, I'm becoming quite convinced that I should stick with using filler with 45-120. It's just going to produce a much more even or predictable muzzle velocity, which is going to be better for accuracy. It's kind of hard to justify going to a load that jumps around as much as this one does. So that's basically what I have for you today. If you got something out of this video and stuck with it till the end, I encourage you to click subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click like, share it with your friends. Take a look at some of the other videos we have on the channel. Try to do the best we can to provide you with the kind of knowledge that's most helpful to you, and we cover a wide variety of topics. So from the Way to Native Chronicles, just want to say God bless, and see you next time.